The elevator doors slid open on the 14th floor, and Brianna Ellis stepped out with her cart of cleaning supplies, already exhausted though her shift had barely begun. She had 3 buildings to finish tonight, and this luxury apartment complex in downtown Seattle always took the longest because the residents expected perfection. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, probably her roommate asking if she could pick up milk on the way home, but she ignored it. The cleaning company she worked for had strict rules about phone usage during shifts, and she needed this job too badly to risk a write-up. She knocked on apartment 1407, waiting the requisite 30 seconds before using her master key. The lease agreements all stated that cleaning would occur on Thursday evenings, and most residents cleared out for a few hours or left notes about what they wanted done. This particular unit had been added to her route only last week, and she had not met the owner yet. The first time she had cleaned it, the place had been empty and pristine, as though no one actually lived there. Tonight, however, was different. The door swung open before she could turn her key, and a man stood there in worn jeans and a faded university sweatshirt, his dark hair disheveled and his eyes tired. He was handsome in an understated way, with strong features and a shadow of stubble along his jaw. He looked like he had not slept in days. "I'm so sorry," Brianna said quickly. "I can come back later if this is a bad time." "No, it's fine, come in." His voice was rough but not unkind. "I forgot what day it was, I've been working." She wheeled her cart inside, glancing around the apartment. It looked different than last week. Papers covered the dining table, a laptop sat open on the counter, and empty coffee cups littered various surfaces. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the city lights, but the man did not seem to notice them as he returned to the table and stared at his laptop screen with intense concentration. "I'll try to stay out of your way," Brianna said, beginning in the kitchen. She worked quietly, efficiently, the way she had learned during her 2 years with the cleaning company. This job paid her rent and groceries while she took online courses in graphic design, hoping to eventually build a career that did not leave her back aching and her hands raw from chemicals. "Do you want coffee?" the man asked suddenly, looking up from his work. "I just made a fresh pot." "Oh, no thank you. I'm not supposed to accept anything from residents." He stood and walked to the kitchen, pouring himself another cup. Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the tension in his shoulders. "That's a ridiculous rule. You're here working same as me. Still, I should not." She moved to the living room, dusting the shelves that held an eclectic mix of books and what looked like architectural models. Small buildings crafted from wood and metal with incredible detail. "Did you make these?" she asked before she could stop herself. Generally, she did not engage in conversation with the residents beyond basic pleasantries. He walked over, coffee cup in hand, and looked at the models as though seeing them for the first time in a while. "Years ago, yeah. I studied architecture before I switched tracks. They're beautiful." She meant it. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, each tiny building unique and purposeful. "Thanks. I don't have much time for that kind of thing anymore." He sounded regretful. "I'm Vincent, by the way, Vincent Young. Brianna Ellis." She shook his extended hand briefly, before returning to her work. She finished the living room and moved to the bathroom, giving Vincent space to continue whatever had him so absorbed at the dining table. Through the open door, she could hear him on a phone call, his voice sharp with frustration as he discussed contracts and deadlines and cost overruns. She gathered that he worked in real estate development, though the details were too fragmented for her to piece together the full picture. When she emerged, he had hung up and was rubbing his temples. "Bad day?" she asked, then immediately regretted the familiarity. Bad month, he said with a tired laugh. We're trying to close on a major development project and everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. Permits delayed, contractors backing out, financing complications. I've been living on coffee and 3 hours of sleep for weeks. That sounds miserable. It is. He looked at her with sudden focus, as though really seeing her for the first time. Do you like what you do? Cleaning, I mean. The question surprised her. Most residents did not acknowledge her beyond a nod or a brief greeting, certainly did not ask about her life. It pays the bills while I'm in school. I'm studying design. What kind of design? Graphic design. Branding, marketing materials, that sort of thing. It's all online courses right now because I work nights, but I'm hoping to build up a portfolio and transition into it full-time eventually. Vincent nodded thoughtfully. That's smart, having a plan. She finished the bedroom last, changing the sheets and organizing the chaos that had accumulated on the nightstand. When she came back out, Vincent was still at the dining table, but he had closed his laptop. All done, she said. Same time next week. Brianna, wait. He stood, shoving his hands in his pockets. This is going to sound strange, but would you want to grab dinner sometime? Not tonight, obviously, since you're working, but maybe this weekend. Her heart did a strange little flip. She had not dated anyone in over a year, too busy with work and school to even think about it. And there was something intense about Vincent Young, something that made her nervous and intrigued at the same time. I don't know if that's a good idea, she said slowly. I clean your apartment. So I'll clean it myself going forward. Problem solved. He smiled, and it transformed his tired face into something warm and genuine. I like talking to you. You're easy to talk to, and I could use an evening where I don't think about permits and contractors and financing. Brianna bit her lip, considering. Every practical instinct told her this was a bad idea. Residents and cleaning staff did not date. It was an unspoken rule, a boundary that kept things professional and simple. But Vincent looked at her like she was a person, not just the invisible woman who scrubbed his bathroom, and that meant something. Okay, she said finally. Saturday, his smile widened. Saturday, give me your number and I'll text you the details. She rattled off her number, he typed it into his phone, and a moment later her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Got it, she said, unable to suppress her own smile. I'll let you get back to work. Thanks for listening to me complain about my day. Anytime. She left his apartment feeling lighter than she had in months, pushing her cart to the next unit with an unfamiliar flutter of anticipation in her chest. Saturday arrived wrapped in that particular gray drizzle Seattle did so well, the kind of weather that made staying inside feel like the only logical choice. Brianna had changed outfits 4 times before settling on jeans and a soft blue sweater, casual but put together, hopefully striking the right balance for wherever Vincent planned to take her. He had texted that morning with an address and a time, 7 o'clock, nothing more. She plugged it into her phone's map, and was surprised to find it was a restaurant she had heard about but never dreamed of trying. The kind of place that required reservations weeks in advance, and charged more for a single meal than she usually spent on groceries in a week. She almost texted him to suggest somewhere else, somewhere more in her budget, but she stopped herself. He had invited her. He chose the place. She could handle one fancy dinner without spiraling into anxiety about the cost. Vincent was waiting outside the restaurant when her rideshare pulled up, and he looked completely different than he had on Thursday night. He wore dark slacks and a button-down shirt under a leather jacket, his hair neatly styled, his face clean-shaven. He looked polished and confident and expensive, and Brianna felt a moment of panic that she was underdressed, out of her depth, making a mistake. But then he smiled, that same genuine smile from Thursday, and the panic receded. You look beautiful, he said, opening the restaurant door for her. You clean up pretty well yourself, she replied, and he laughed. The restaurant was all dark wood and soft lighting, intimate tables scattered throughout a space that managed to feel both elegant and welcoming. A hostess led them to a corner booth, away from the main dining area, and handed them leather-bound menus that did not list prices. Brianna opened hers, and tried not to let her eyes widen at the options. Everything sounded incredible and intimidating in equal measure. She had no idea what half the ingredients were. Order whatever you want, Vincent said as though reading her mind. I can recommend the salmon if you like fish, or the braised short rib is fantastic. What are you getting? Probably the steak. I've been living on takeout for so long that I'm craving something that required actual effort to prepare. They ordered, Vincent requesting a bottle of wine that the server praised effusively. And then they were alone in their little corner of the restaurant, the noise of other diners, a pleasant hum in the background. So tell me about your design work, Vincent said, leaning forward with apparent genuine interest. What kind of projects do you want to do? Brianna relaxed into the conversation, telling him about the online courses she was taking, the logo she had designed for her friend's small business, her dream of eventually working for a creative agency, or maybe starting her own freelance practice. Vincent listened intently, asking questions that showed he was really paying attention, and she found herself sharing more than she had intended, talking about her childhood in Oregon, her parents who had not understood her desire to move to the city, her struggle to balance work and school, and something resembling a social life. You're ambitious, Vincent said. I respect that. A lot of people talk about their dreams but never put in the work to make them happen. What about you? Brianna asked. You said you studied architecture but switched tracks. What happened? Vincent's expression shifted, became more guarded. I got offered an opportunity that was too good to pass up. My family has a real estate development company, and they needed someone to take over project management for our commercial properties. It made sense financially, and I told myself I could always go back to architecture later. But you have not. No. The business grew faster than any of us expected, and suddenly I was running the entire operation. My father retired 5 years ago, and it all fell to me. Do you regret it? He considered the question, swirling the wine in his glass. Sometimes. I loved architecture, loved the creative problem-solving aspect of it. But development has its own rewards. I'm building things, shaping the city's landscape. It's just more about the business side than the design side. Their food arrived, beautifully plated and aromatic, and they ate and talked, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Vincent told her about the project that had been consuming his life, a mixed-use development downtown that would include retail space, offices, and affordable housing units. The affordable housing component was his idea, he admitted, something he had fought for against investors who wanted to maximize profits. That's admirable, Brianna said. Most developers do not care about affordable housing. Most developers have not watched this city become impossible to live in for anyone making less than 6 figures, Vincent replied. I have resources and influence, and I want to use them to make a difference, even if it's just one building at a time. Brianna felt something shift inside her, a deepening of interest that went beyond physical attraction. Vincent Young was not just handsome and successful. He had principles. He cared about things that mattered. They lingered over dessert, neither seeming eager to end the evening. Vincent told her about his sister who lived in Boston and his mother who spent half the year traveling through Europe. Brianna told him about her roommate who was chronically late on rent and her weekend volunteer work at an animal shelter. The conversation was easy and comfortable, the kind that made hours feel like minutes. When they finally left the restaurant, the drizzle had turned into proper rain. Vincent hailed a cab and insisted on riding with her back to her apartment in Capitol Hill, even though it was out of his way. They sat close in the back seat, the city lights blurred through rain-streaked windows, and Brianna felt hyper-aware of his proximity, the warmth of his body next to hers. "I had a really great time tonight," she said as the cab pulled up to her building. "Me too." Vincent looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Can I see you again? Tomorrow, maybe? Or is that too soon?" "Tomorrow works," she said, smiling. "What did you have in mind? Something more casual. Maybe a walk around Green Lake if the rain clears, and then lunch." "That sounds perfect." He walked her to her building's entrance, and there was a moment of uncertainty where neither of them knew quite what to do. Then Vincent leaned in and kissed her cheek, his lips warm against her skin. "Good night, Brianna. Good night." She floated up the stairs to her third-floor apartment, giddy in a way she had not felt since she was a teenager with her first crush. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of dates and text messages and stolen moments between her work shifts. Vincent took her to a jazz club in Pioneer Square, to a farmer's market in Ballard, to a quiet beach on Bainbridge Island where they walked barefoot in the sand and talked until sunset. He was attentive and thoughtful, always planning dates around her schedule, never making her feel like her work was an inconvenience. But he was also intense, moving at a pace that left Brianna breathless and uncertain. He texted her good morning every day without fail. He brought her coffee at the animal shelter when she volunteered on Saturday afternoons. He talked about future plans with a certainty that suggested they had been together for months rather than weeks, mentioning concerts in the fall and a weekend trip to Portland he wanted to take her on. Brianna liked him more than she had liked anyone in years, but there was a small voice in her head that kept whispering that this was too much too fast, that she barely knew him, that people did not fall this hard this quickly in real life. 3 weeks and 4 days after their first date, Vincent invited her to his apartment for dinner. He cooked, something she had not expected, producing a meal of roasted chicken and vegetables that was simple but delicious. They ate at his dining table, the same table that had been covered in papers and stress the first night she met him, and talked about their respective days. After dinner, they moved to the couch, and Vincent pulled her close, his arm around her shoulders. "I have something I want to talk to you about," he said, and there was a seriousness in his tone that made her nervous. "Okay," she said slowly. "I know this is probably going to sound crazy, and feel free to say no, but I have a business conference in San Francisco next weekend, and I want you to come with me. I will have meetings during the day, but we would have the evenings together, and you have always said you want to visit San Francisco. I will take care of everything, the flight, the hotel, all of it." Brianna sat up, putting a little distance between them. "Vincent, that's incredibly generous, but I do not know if I can take time off work on such short notice. You have vacation days, do you not?" "I do, but I was saving them for the holidays." "So save them for a different holiday. Come to San Francisco with me." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I want to spend that time with you. I hate the idea of being away from you for 5 days. That was when the panic started to creep in, cold and insistent. 5 days. He hated the idea of being away from her for 5 days. They had known each other for less than a month. "I need to think about it," she said, and she saw the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. "Of course. Take all the time you need." But the conversation had shifted something, introduced a tension that had not been there before. Brianna left earlier than she had planned, claiming exhaustion from a long shift, and Vincent did not push her to stay. Over the next few days, the panic grew. Vincent continued to text her constantly, continued to make plans that stretched further into the future. He sent her a link to an art exhibit opening in 2 months that he wanted to attend with her. He mentioned a cousin's wedding in December and asked if she would be his date. He talked about introducing her to his mother when she returned from Europe in the fall. Brianna felt like she was standing on a cliff edge, the ground crumbling beneath her feet. She liked Vincent. She really, genuinely liked him, but this was too much. It was too intense, too overwhelming. She was 24 years old, working a job she did not love and taking online courses, and trying to build a future for herself. She did not know if she was ready for someone like Vincent Young, someone who seemed to have his entire life figured out and wanted to slot her into it without asking if she was ready to fit. On Tuesday evening, 6 days before the San Francisco trip, Brianna texted Vincent and asked if they could talk. He called her immediately, concern evident in his voice. "What's wrong? Can we meet somewhere? In person? I will come to you. Are you at home?" "No, I am at the coffee shop on Broadway, the one near the bookstore. I will be there in 20 minutes. He made it in 15, walking through the door with his hair damp from rain and worry etched across his face. Brianna had claimed a corner table, 2 cups of coffee already waiting. Vincent sat down across from her, and she could see him bracing himself for bad news. "Talk to me," he said quietly. "This is moving too fast," she said, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess them. "Vincent, I like you so much, but we have only known each other for 3 weeks, and you are already planning months into the future, and I feel like I cannot breathe." He was quiet for a long moment, his hands wrapped around the coffee cup she had bought for him. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "I did not realize I was making you feel that way. I am sorry. It is not that I do not want those things eventually. Maybe. I just need time to figure out what I want, and I feel like you are 10 steps ahead of me and I am trying to catch up." Vincent nodded slowly. "You are right. I have been moving too fast. I can see that now." He looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. "Here is the thing, Brianna. I have not felt this way about anyone in a long time, maybe ever. And that is not an exaggeration or me being dramatic. I spent the last 5 years building a business and ignoring everything else in my life. And then you walked into my apartment with your cleaning cart and actually saw me as a person, and it felt like waking up from a very long sleep." Tears prickled at the corners of Brianna's eyes. "I feel that too, I do, but I am scared." "Then we go slow," Vincent said simply. "However slow you need, I will follow your pace. What about San Francisco? Forget San Francisco, or do not forget it but put it on hold. Maybe we can go someday when you are ready. There is no rush. You are not angry. No, I am grateful you were honest with me instead of just pulling away." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I want to be with you, Brianna. But I want you to want to be with me too, and that means giving you the space to figure out what you want." She squeezed his hand, relief flooding through her. "I do want to be with you. I just need us to slow down. Then slow we will go, one day at a time, no pressure, no expectations. We will figure this out together." They finished their coffee and walked through the rain-soaked streets, hand in hand, and Brianna felt like she could breathe again. Vincent kept his word. Over the following weeks, he dialed back the intensity, stopped making plans months in advance, focused on the present instead of the future. They still saw each other regularly, but it felt more balanced, more sustainable. Brianna learned more about him in those weeks, the pieces of his life that he had glossed over in the early rush of romance. She learned that he had a complicated relationship with his father, who had built the family business from nothing and expected Vincent to maintain his legacy. She learned that Vincent donated a significant portion of his income to homelessness prevention programs and affordable housing initiatives, quietly and without fanfare. She learned that he had a terrible singing voice and an inexplicable love for bad action movies, and a habit of leaving cabinet doors open that drove him crazy even as he never remembered to close them. And the more she learned, the more she fell for him. Not the whirlwind version of falling that had scared her so badly, but a steady, deepening affection that felt solid and real. 2 months after their conversation at the coffee shop, Brianna finally asked the question that had been nagging at her since their first date. They were at his apartment, cooking dinner together, and she said it casually, as though it was not particularly important. "So that first night we met, when I was cleaning your apartment, did you know you wanted to ask me out right then?" Vincent looked up from the vegetables he was chopping. "Honestly? Yes. I know that probably sounds crazy, but yes. You were kind and competent, and you treated me like a regular person instead of like someone you needed to impress. And when you asked about my architectural models, you seemed genuinely interested, not just making polite conversation. It was refreshing. But you did not know anything about me. I knew enough. I knew I wanted to know more." He set down the knife and turned to face her fully. "Can I tell you something that I did not mention before because I did not want to freak you out? Should I be worried?" "No, but it is relevant to the whole moving too fast thing." He took a breath. "When I asked you out that first night, I already knew I wanted something serious with you. Not marriage or anything that extreme, but something real. I have dated casually plenty of times, and I knew this was different. That you were different. So I came on too strong because I was already all in, and I did not think about the fact that you might need time to get to where I already was." Brianna absorbed this, stirring the sauce on the stove to give herself something to do with her hands. "And now?" "Now I am still all in," Vincent said simply, "but I am also patient. However long it takes you to get there, I will wait." She turned off the burner and crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I think I am getting there," she said softly. "Slower than you, maybe, but I am getting there." He kissed the top of her head, his arms tightening around her. "That is all I need to hear." As summer turned to fall, their relationship continued to deepen and evolve. Brianna met Vincent's sister when she visited from Boston, a sharp-witted lawyer who interrogated Brianna over brunch and then declared her approval. Vincent met Brianna's parents when they made a rare trip to Seattle, and he charmed her skeptical father by asking detailed questions about his work as a forestry technician and complimenting her mother's terrible casserole. Vincent's business continued to demand long hours and constant attention, but he made time for Brianna, carving out evenings and weekends that he protected fiercely. Brianna's online courses were going well, and she started taking on small freelance projects, building her portfolio slowly but steadily. 4 months into their relationship, Vincent told her something he had been holding back. They were at his apartment, and he had been quiet all evening, clearly working up to something. "There is something I need to tell you," he said finally. "And I probably should have told you sooner, but I did not want it to change how you saw me." Brianna felt a spike of anxiety. "Okay. Do you remember how I told you my family has a real estate development company?" "Yes. What I did not mention is the scale of it. We are not a small operation. We have projects in 6 states, over 200 employees, and annual revenue in the hundreds of millions." "I am not just comfortable, Brianna. I am a millionaire several times over." She stared at him, processing this information. "Why did you not tell me before?" "Because people treat me differently when they know. Either they get weird and uncomfortable, or they start seeing dollar signs. I wanted you to get to know me as just Vincent, not as Vincent Young, the real estate developer." I clean apartments for a living, Brianna said slowly. You did not think that might be relevant information. I did not want you to feel like there was some kind of power imbalance between us. I did not want you to think I saw you as less than me because you make less money than I do. Brianna stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city lights. Her mind was racing. Vincent was a millionaire. She had been dating a millionaire for 4 months and had not known. Part of her felt foolish for not figuring it out sooner. The expensive restaurants, the nice apartment, the casual way he paid for everything without ever seeming to worry about the cost. Say something, Vincent said from behind her. I do not know what to say. I mean, I guess it explains some things, but it also feels like you were keeping something pretty significant from me. I was, and I am sorry, I should have told you sooner. He came to stand beside her at the window. Does this change anything between us? She thought about it, really thought about it. Did it change anything? Vincent was still the same person he had been 10 minutes ago, kind, thoughtful, principled. The money did not change who he was at his core. No, she said finally. I do not think it changes anything. But I do not want you paying for everything anymore. We should split things more evenly. Brianna, I can afford it. I know you can. But I need to feel like an equal partner in this relationship, and I cannot do that if you are constantly paying for everything. So we split things, or we do cheaper activities that are more in my budget. Vincent looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded. Okay, if that is what you need, we will make it work. Thank you. He pulled her into a hug and she leaned against him, feeling the solid strength of him, the steady beat of his heart. I love you, he said into her hair, so quietly she almost missed it. Brianna's breath caught. They had not said those words yet, had been dancing around them for weeks. I love you too, she whispered back, and felt him relax against her. The next few months brought new challenges and new joys. Brianna finished her online courses and started actively seeking freelance work, slowly building a client base. Vincent's mixed-use development finally broke ground after months of delays, and he was consumed with managing the construction process. They fought occasionally, usually about Vincent working too much or Brianna being too stubborn about accepting help when she needed it, but they always talked through it, always came back to each other. In January, almost a year after they had met, Vincent took Brianna to the building site for his development project. It was freezing cold, the construction site muddy and chaotic, but he walked her through it with obvious pride, pointing out where the affordable housing units would be, where the retail spaces would open onto a public plaza, where the office building would rise up with environmentally sustainable features. This is going to change lives, Brianna said, awestruck by the scale of it. That is the hope. Vincent pulled her close, both of them bundled in winter coats. I want to build things that matter. That is why I do this. You are a good man, Vincent Young. I try to be. He kissed her, cold lips warming quickly. Come on, I am taking you somewhere else. He drove them to a neighborhood in Fremont, parking in front of a small storefront with empty windows. What are we doing here? Brianna asked. This space just became available. The lease is reasonable, and it is in a good location with decent foot traffic. He handed her a key. I thought it might be a good spot for a design studio. Brianna stared at the key in her hand. Vincent, I cannot afford to rent a studio space, so let me help. Call it an investment in your business. You can pay me back when you are successful and do not need my help anymore. I cannot accept this. Why not? Because it is too much. You cannot just throw money at my problems. Vincent's jaw tightened. I am not throwing money at your problems. I am trying to help the woman I love achieve her dreams. There is a difference. Is there? Because from where I am standing, it feels like you are trying to fix everything with your money instead of letting me do it myself. They stood on the sidewalk, the winter wind cutting through their coats, and Brianna saw the hurt in Vincent's eyes. But she also saw understanding. "You are right," he said quietly. "I am sorry. I got excited about the idea and did not think about how it would make you feel. I appreciate the thought, I really do, but I need to build this myself. When I am ready for a studio space, I will find one I can afford, and it will mean more because I did it on my own." Vincent nodded. "I understand, and I am proud of you for standing your ground even when I am being an idiot." She laughed despite herself, the tension breaking. "You are not an idiot. You are a man who is used to solving problems with resources most people do not have, but some things cannot be solved that way," Julie noted. They went to lunch at a cheap Thai place that Brianna loved, splitting the bill exactly down the middle, and Brianna felt the balance between them restore itself. Spring came early that year, bringing cherry blossoms and longer days and a sense of renewal. Brianna landed her first major client, a local brewery that needed a complete rebrand, and she threw herself into the project with fierce determination. Vincent's development was rising steadily, the skeleton of the building taking shape against the Seattle skyline. One evening in April, Vincent picked Brianna up from the animal shelter where she still volunteered every Saturday. She came out to find him leaning against his car, holding a bouquet of tulips and looking nervous. "What is wrong?" she asked, taking the flowers. "Nothing is wrong. But I have something I want to ask you, and I am worried you are going to think I am moving too fast again." Brianna's heart started to pound. "Okay. My lease is up at the end of June, and I have been thinking about looking for a house instead of renewing. Something with more space, maybe a yard in a quieter neighborhood." He took a breath. "I want you to move in with me. Not right away if you are not ready, but maybe this summer. We can look for a place together, somewhere that feels like ours instead of mine." Brianna felt a rush of different emotions. Fear, excitement, love, uncertainty. "That is a big step. I know. And if you are not ready, we can table this conversation and come back to it later. But we have been together for over a year now, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it. I want to wake up next to you every morning and come home to you every night. I want to build a life with you." She thought about her cramped apartment with the roommate who was always late on rent, the way she had to navigate around Vincent's schedule to see him, the constant back and forth between two places. She thought about what it would mean to have a home with him, a space that belonged to both of them. "Yes," she said, and watched his face light up. "Yes, I want to move in with you. Let us find a house together." Vincent picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing, and Brianna felt something settle inside her, a certainty that this was right. They spent the next 2 months looking at houses, a process that was both exciting and frustrating. They disagreed about neighborhoods and layouts, and whether a yard was actually necessary. But they also learned more about each other, discovering shared priorities and non-negotiables. Brianna wanted space for a home office where she could meet with clients. Vincent wanted a garage where he could set up a workshop for architectural models, a hobby he was trying to resurrect. They both wanted something with character, not the sterile modern boxes that dominated the market. In June, they found it. A craftsman house in Wallingford, 3 bedrooms with original woodwork and a small yard, and a detached garage that Vincent immediately claimed for his workshop. It needed work, cosmetic updates mostly, but the bones were good and the neighborhood was perfect. Vincent wanted to buy it outright, but Brianna insisted on contributing. They negotiated for days, finally agreeing that she would pay a percentage proportional to her income, and Vincent would cover the rest. It was not perfectly equal, but it felt fair, a partnership that acknowledged their different financial situations without diminishing Brianna's contribution. They moved in during a hot week in July, hauling boxes and furniture with help from Brianna's roommate and Vincent's sister, who flew in for the occasion. Brianna set up her office in the front bedroom, painting the walls a soft gray and installing shelves for her design books and samples. Vincent transformed the garage into a workshop, bringing his architectural models out of storage and setting up a workbench. The house slowly became a home. They argued about decorating choices and whose turn it was to do the dishes. They hosted a housewarming party that got slightly out of control when Vincent's business partner brought too much wine. They adopted a dog from the shelter where Brianna volunteered, a mutt with 3 legs and more personality than any dog had a right to have. Brianna's design business continued to grow, and she hired her first employee, a recent college graduate with talent and enthusiasm. Vincent's development opened in September, a gleaming building that housed businesses and families and had already become a landmark in the downtown area. The affordable housing units filled immediately, with a waiting list that stretched on for pages. On a crisp October evening, 2 years after they had met, Vincent took Brianna to the roof of his completed building. The city sprawled out around them, lights twinkling in the dusk, and Brianna thought about how much had changed since that first night when she had knocked on his apartment door with her cleaning cart. "You remember when you told me we were moving too fast?" Vincent asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Of course I remember. I was terrified. But I stayed. I told you we could go slow, and I meant it. You did. You kept your word." Vincent turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I think we have gone slow enough now. What do you think?" He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Brianna's breath caught. He opened it to reveal a ring, simple and elegant, a single diamond set in a platinum band. "Brianna Ellis, I have loved you from the moment you asked about my architectural models like they actually mattered. I have loved you through every speed we have tried, fast and slow and everything in between. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Brianna's face, but she was smiling so widely her cheeks ached. "Yes. Yes, absolutely yes." Vincent slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. He kissed her as the sun set over Seattle. 2 people who had found each other against all odds and learned to move at a pace that worked for both of them. They married the following spring in a small ceremony at their house, surrounded by family and friends and their 3-legged dog who served as the ring bearer and promptly lost the rings in the yard. It did not matter. Nothing mattered except the promises they made to each other, the life they were building together. Vincent never did go back to architecture professionally, but he filled his workshop with projects, designing and building models that occasionally turned into actual structures when a client commissioned something special. Brianna's design firm grew steadily, eventually moving into that studio space in Fremont that Vincent had tried to give her years before, but this time she paid for it herself. They had their first child 2 years after the wedding, a daughter with Brianna's dark hair and Vincent's intense eyes. Their second, a son, came 18 months later, and suddenly their quiet house was full of noise and chaos and love. On their 5th anniversary, they went back to that rooftop where Vincent had proposed. The city had changed, new buildings rising alongside the old, but Vincent's development still stood proud, still housing families who might not have had anywhere else to go. "You ever regret it?" Brianna asked, leaning against the railing. "That we did not get married right away, that I made us slow down." Vincent pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "Never. You were right to pump the brakes. We needed that time to build a foundation that could support everything that came after. If we had rushed into it, we might not have made it. We made it. We made it," he agreed. "And I would not change a single thing about how we got here." Below them, the city hummed with life, full of people moving at their own paces, finding their own paths. And on that rooftop, two people who had learned to move together stood wrapped in each other's arms, grateful for every moment that had brought them to this point, ready for whatever came next.